Obre ulfro. O genki desu ka? Ni hao ma. Bonjour. Buenos dias. Namaste. Namaskaram. Let's continue our journey through the lands of Sumer. One of Sumer's earliest settlements was Eridu, which the Sumerians believed to be the home of the gods. In the Sumerian king list, an ancient clay tablet dating back 2119 BC, which lists both prehistorical and mythological Mesopotamian kings, begins with the phrase, "When kingship from heaven was lowered, the kingship was in Eridu." The Anunnaki arrived in Sumer around 4250 BCE, shortly after Jupiter created the sun. The latter was part of the entourage, having assumed human form in the figure of Horus. He also cohabitated with humans, creating a species of hybrids, the spawn of which has gone on to rule the world as the Grail bloodline. Some believe that Lucifer gave birth to the Grail bloodline. However, he is the initiator of evil who cannot create by his own efforts and only survives through the base desires of others. Spirit told me the words, "the children of Horus," meaning that it was through the union of Horus and humans that the Grail bloodline was birthed, whose descendants are now known as the global elite. Given that the sun absconded from his place in the sky to consummate the plane, it is little wonder that the legends of multiple cultures from around the world record there was complete darkness for many months. The first part of the Mexican Codex Chimalpopoco reports that there was a cosmic catastrophe in the distant past, resulting in an extended period of night. Spirit told me the bloodline was encouraged not to center but to spread out. Therefore, the Grail hybrids migrated across the world at their own instigation, and whatever later exiling that occurred, they maneuvered. Wherever they settled, the sun's descendants used their esoteric knowledge to inveigle themselves as the rulers. It is no surprise, therefore, that those years were a time of great advancement for humanity. The biblical authors alleged in Genesis that in 2000 BC, God commanded the Israelite leader Abraham to leave his birthplace of Ur in Sumer with the Hebrews and to found a new nation. The group allegedly went on to settle a region in the Levant, present-day northern Israel, Lebanon, and parts of Jordan and modern-day Syria, which they renamed the land of Canaan, later called Phoenicia. However, the Canaanites were not newcomers to the Eastern Mediterranean in 2000 BCE. Rather, their Grail ancestors had migrated to the Levant more than 2,000 years previously, some of whom went on to become renowned seafarers, the Phoenician seamen. The name of the Lebanese city of Baalbek honors Baal, which was initially an alias of Jupiter, but later around the final millennium BCE, it became a joint alias of Jupiter and the sun. In the 4th century BC, Alexander the Great renamed Baalbek Heliopolis, meaning the city of the sun, after the Hebrew city of the same name and capital of solar worship in Egypt. And in the 1st century BC, Julius Caesar made it part of the Roman Empire. The city lies at the foot of Mount Hermon, where the biblical authors allege the Nephilim were born. On the mountain slopes above the city, there are numerous structures built in Baal, Jupiter's honor, including a large obelisk and a temple, the remains of which are still evident. The Romans having rebuilt it in 3322 BCE or 332 BC. The mountain's southern border and the Golan Heights to the east have been under Israeli control since the country's Six-Day War with Syria in 1967. Many Egyptologists believe that a large-scale invasion of Egypt occurred around 3400 BC by people who called themselves the followers of Horus. We can be certain those invaders were the Grail bloodline, given that Egyptian civilization, like that of Sumer's, did not evolve, but instead began life as an established culture, and also that the Egyptian gods were an exact copy of that of Sumer's. The invaders to Egypt made a deal with the natives, as confirmed by Spirit, who said, the Jews and the Egyptians made an ancient deal, those Jews being the hybrids and their disciples who later created the Torah. The agreement entailed that the Grail bloodline would share their esoteric knowledge in return for which they would become Egypt's rulers. 3100 BCE saw the pharaoh system of rule introduced to Egypt and the Giza complex completed within the next 100 years. Thereafter, the Egyptian rulers were the keepers of the royal secret, having insider knowledge of the capability of the pyramid complex. The pharaoh rule continued for the next 3,000 years, the last pharaoh being Cleopatra. The Roman emperors then adopted the title in 30 BCE and used it up until 313 CE, 1 year after Christianity became the official religion of Rome and a decade before the compilation of the Bible. As the Hyksos pharaohs, the Grail bloodline ruled Lower Egypt from their imperial court of the royal dragon and order on 2 occasions. The first being the kingdom's 4th dynasty, and the second being the 15th to the 17th dynasties. The mainstream narrative has buried the first rule of Hyksos, while alleging the 15th to the 17th dynasties were invaders to Egypt. However, examination of skeletal remains has confirmed they were foreigners who had immigrated to the country many centuries previously. Furthermore, Manetho, an Egyptian priest and historian, recorded that the architect of the Giza pyramid complex was a Hyksos. In addition, the Canaanite language was familiar in Egypt long before the 15th dynasty. The UNMASKED pyramid already contains, toward 2300 BC, some sentences in this language, written phonetically with hieroglyphs. The fact that Egyptians loaned Canaanite words proves that there were many Canaanite inhabitants in Egypt from remotest antiquity. The biblical authors used the biography of the Hyksos pharaohs, the ancestors of today's elite, to create the leaders of the Israelites. Both the Hyksos and the biblical Israelites were Semites. There is no evidence to prove that the Israelite leaders existed, while the names of the Egyptian pharaohs are almost entirely absent from biblical texts, and the Bible does not mention the Sphinx or the pyramids. Around 1360 BC, the Hyksos left Egypt, allegedly after their exile. Some sailed to Greece to join with other hybrid descendants who had earlier settled there, while a great many others went on to join relatives in Iberia and Phoenicia. Others migrated west to Gaul, now France, their descendants marrying into the families of the Merovingian kings of the Franks. The bloodline had also established themselves as the ruling elite in Ireland and Great Britain, their descendants later proceeding to join their European relatives to enforce their version of government ruled by successive popes under the guise of Christianity. The Merovingian descendants became the Carolingian, Tudor, Plantagenet, Stuart, Habsburg, Hanoverian, Guelph, Bosleyan, the Battenberg, Guise, Savoy, and Saxe-Coburg-Gotha families, who in turn all gave birth to multiple other family lines, familial lines. In 1917, the British royals dropped their Germanic surname and adopted the name Windsor, instead naming themselves after the land and castle they had earlier purchased. The world's rulers have always bed their relatives, including the Egyptian pharaohs who married their half-sisters, to ensure that the reins of power have remained within the bloodline's grasp. Their descendants, the British royals, continue the tradition. Queen Victoria and Prince Albert were first cousins. Their daughter, Queen Mary, married her second cousin, once removed, and her daughter, Queen Elizabeth II, married her third cousin, Prince Philip. The British royals claimed descent from the kings, David and Solomon, of the Jewish house of Judah, and from Jesus Christ, making them part of the Holy Grail bloodline. However, they have failed to clarify that the house of Judah, Grail, and Hyksos dragon bloodlines are all the same and originated with the Son, of which Jesus Christ is an alias, or that they and 42 out of 43 U.S. presidents share common ancestry. The royals revere Jupiter as St. George, Prince Harry having married in St. George's Chapel on the grounds of Windsor Castle to the tune of the Song of Solomon. The six-pointed hexagram, or Star of David, is the symbol of both King David and Jupiter. The ancient mystery religions used the red one to symbolize gods of child sacrifice, fertility, sex, love, and war. And its outline now adorns Catholic churches the world over. A blue version also hallmarks the Israeli flag, although the symbol did not represent Judaism until the Zionist Congress adopted it in 1897. The British royals and the Catholic popes claim that the Bible affirms it is their right to rule the world. However, it was the royals' ancestors, the descendants of the Hyksos dragon court, and those elite exiled there from Jerusalem, who along with the Egyptian priests created the Old Testament in Babylon and southern Mesopotamia in the 6th century BCE. Another of their ancestors, the Roman Emperor Constantine, convened the Council of Nicaea in the 4th century CE to decide what text the Bible would contain. And another ancestor, King James I of the Stuarts, who arranged for its authorized versions publication just prior to the New World being colonized. The Bible in print today little resembles the first version from the 4th century CE, a handwritten copy of which still exists and contains no references to Jesus Christ's resurrection. The Bible is now the most published book on earth, while the cross is its most prolific symbol. When Constantine convened the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE, he also made the opening address and supervised the proceedings, and any participants who disagreed with the verdicts faced banishment and even death. In the preface to my students' Bible, it states that the New Testament is not complete, and there are gaps in its continuity. The cause of those gaps is the inability of the bloodline to marry their lies. Christianity had become the official religion of Rome in 312 CE after Constantine allegedly had a vision of a cross in the sky, which the church claims brought about his conversion to Christianity. However, Constantine was a member of the Grail bloodline, and his allegiance was to the demonic trinity. For his whole life, he was a worshiper of the unconquerable sun god, Sol Invictus, whom Imperial Rome had morphed from Mithras, both of which were aliases of the sun. During his reign, he had coins inscribed in Latin with the words, "committed to the invincible sun." And he continued to build pagan statues and temples until his death. Furthermore, after Nicaea, he had his wife boiled alive and his relatives murdered by strangulation. By the time of the Bible's compilation, the bloodline had destroyed countless numbers of documents and books that conflicted with their false trail. A task the Holy See, the Vatican, continued, and now only 1% of the written history of the world survives, apart from that held in secret archives. The only possible reason for destroying the records of the history of the world can be in order to promote a fraudulent one. The Vatican published in its first index of forbidden books in the 5th century, updating it regularly throughout the following centuries, and in 1564, its Congregation of the Inquisition compiled the list in the Tridentine Index, the last edition of which was in 1948. The papacy claims its right to govern the Christian church worldwide through apostolic succession from St. Peter, who it alleges was the first bishop of Rome. However, no evidence exists to support the claim, and it was not until 997 CE that Clement of Rome first proposed Peter and Paul were martyred there. Even the editor of the National Weekly Magazine, published by the Catholic Jesuit Order in the U.S., Father Raymond Strauss, has admitted the evidence for Peter's presence in Rome is not airtight, and that's a nice way of putting it. When the Catholic Church claimed ecclesiastical supremacy and appointed the Pope the ruler of all the Christian churches worldwide, it usurped the independence of those people who had previously collected and distributed alms within their local communities, none of whom had been priests. Furthermore, there is no evidence in the canons of the early councils when the Christian bishops met to discuss church doctrine at Nicaea and at Constantinople that they had any knowledge that Rome was destined to be the apostolic see, or that a pontificate would have authority over bishops across the Christian world. The bloodline rehoused its sun god in many religions that are still current today, including Catholicism, that the Roman Church is a sun cult, is evident by the art sculpture, sphere representing the Eye of Horus and celebrating the sun god, mounted in Vatican City, with a twin at the World Trade Center. Although the Eye of Horus is promoted as a symbol of protection, given its malignant gaze, it seems doubtful that protection is for humanity. The Vatican sun cult is further evident by the obelisk erected in front of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, which it unanimously agreed are phallic-shaped monuments that honor Baal, Jupiter, and the sun. Paving stones around it featured the 12 signs of the zodiac, represented in pre-Christian times by the 12 followers of Mithras, and in post-Christian times by the 12 apostles. There are 28 ancient obelisks erected throughout the world, with 6 remaining in Egypt and 13 erected in Rome, which stand at key geomantic positions, that is, sites chosen with the use of divination. The Vatican's obelisk came from the Egyptian city of Heliopolis, the city of the sun, which has the Great Pyramid of Giza at its center, and in 1586, Pope Sixtus V had it erected in front of St. Peter's Basilica. It stands in the center of a sundial the elite used to keep pace with Lucifer's end-time agenda by monitoring the passage of days as they shorten. It is noteworthy that in 5860 BCE, when Jerusalem, along with the alleged Second Hebrew Temple of Solomon, was destroyed, the elite of Judea were also exiled to Babylon, at the same time and place where the Old Testament was written. Graves throughout the world, where the alleged founders of the countries are buried, all bear the bloodline's iconography, such as the three-pronged fleur de lis, which is an homage to the trinity of Lucifer, Jupiter, and the sun, and which is the heraldic badge of the English Prince of Wales, while many also have obelisks built atop them. Those alleged founders ensured that a Christian church was one of the first structures built in towns and hamlets across the world. It is derogatory to the memory of those who have died fighting in the elite's manufactured wars that cenotaphs constructed to honor them are often obelisks in homage to the elite gods. All right, folks. Well, that was a very dense, information-packed presentation. The evidence is there. The evidence is overwhelming. Let's begin to build this new world, this new earth, upon the foundation of truth, shall we? To be continued. Namaste, namaskaram.